the Dadists in the 20s, artists have taken what is loosely referred to as junk, objects from the ordinary world, both usable objects and discarded objects, and made art from them. And in so doing have said a lot about the notions of art and about the culture in which we live. Frank clearly uses that. Many of his works which employ, say, a bicycle saddle and handlebars become objects in their own right, and they take a tilt at some of the canons of art. It's that inclusion of that sort of material that very often provides an access route for some people, yet it's that same inclusion of junk material that makes his work difficult to accept for others.
Frank Womble has been a full-time artist in New Zealand for nearly 10 years. During that time, he's had 8 important gallery exhibitions. He's done sculpture, painting, collage, and published a book of poems. But whatever Frank does, and whatever he does it with, you can always recognize his sense of humor and his unique way of looking at the world.
I'm from America, and through no design of my own, I've made my way to Z, New Zealand. From this point, I'm afforded a unique perspective on the American high technological mass, big madness, and produce these illusions to that end. I was born and raised in a city, so the images that were coming through had a very urban city phenomena to them. And the things that were created in that format were the landscapes I was brought up on, not to mention magazines and newspapers and movies and automobiles. And the spaceman surfaced as the embodiment of man existing in an environment totally dependent on an ultra technology. 11. So that's an extreme gesture. It's as far out as you can get, is to put somebody out there.
Now you're go for PDI, over. Roger, understand. We're go, same tide, we're go. 60 seconds. Lights on. 30 feet down, 2.5. Picking up some dust. 30 feet, 2.5 down. Straight shadow. 4 forward. 4 forward, drifting to the right a little.
The spaceman became a very predominant theme. His gigantic suit with his hoop around his neck immediately led me into clown image.
Clowns pop up everywhere in Frank's work. He not only paints them, but sometimes plays the part in public. He likes to take his art out into the streets. Frank and his art also turn up in the more unusual cafes and restaurants around the city. This is the Last and First Cafe.
The clown is the extreme dreamer. He takes the impossible as close to possible as anyone can. I'm drawn to the clown for his ability to pit himself as the individual against the state or the mechanism of technology. Chaplin best depicted this phenomena in his modern times the individual against or in relation to the machine, continually gesturing with a force that was far greater than his own, yet in and out of control.
Frank's own way of life is a lot more peaceful than his images, but it's just as original. His house is an ever-changing collage of the curious bits and pieces he comes across on his walks and bicycle trips, transformed to become part of his world.
'1984 is closing in fast now, and my involvement with the mask has defined it and resolved it to that the final Big Brother image will be that of Mickey Mouse.
In Womble's view of modern times, the world's looking more Mickey Mouse every day. There's a lot of pleasure in the brushwork, but these smiling Mickeys have a sinister side. Life today may be a farce, but it's starting to look more and more like a disaster movie, the beginning of the end.
The machinery for the end is at hand, and I'm involved with the final sequences, the designing to make this end a grand finale, something we can all go out with a smile on our face. Back in 1979, I was very much into refining my skills as a painter, at which time the Time magazine cover had arrived as landscape, at which time I designed virtually the last 24 covers, including the last cover, the one they wouldn't have time to design. Some people think I'm a religious fanatic because I paint so many crosses in my work. Being of a Western culture, it's one of the predominant symbols that represents our religious beliefs. The cross in its earliest stance represents Christ, the individual crossing the state, as it were. In this more modern evolution, the cross, abstracted into crosshairs, now represents a mass crucifixion.
We decided to make a major acquisition, and we decided to choose a work from the Modern Times series, which is probably the most extensive, most ambitious series that he's been working on in the last years. And from that series we bought If the Shoes Fit, Don't Wear 'Em. The work possesses all the qualities that we identify with Frank Womble: his panache, his sense of humour, his handling of paint. It includes all the elements that we find recurring again and again in the Modern Times cycle. It seemed to stand for that cycle and for so much of Frank's work, and for that reason we made that particular purchase. One of the things that commends Frank to anybody who observes him working is the seriousness with which he goes about his art. He's utterly serious, utterly determined in his work method, and that might seem strange from an artist whose work has so much to do with humour and who's taking swinging side swipes at society all the time. The work simply pours out of his studio. He has a very fertile imagination, and he's determined and single-minded in the way he goes about it.
Jasper Johns the American artist. It's been a profound influence on my recent painting, of which there's an image over here of a flag that he, set of flags that he painted back in, I think it was 1958, which about a year and a half ago sold for $1 million to the Whitney Museum of American Art, and of which this is a substitute copy, which I entitled Ersatz, and was actually, I commissioned another artist to paint it for me to have a real substitute compounding of an idea. And then what really stimulated that along was in Time magazine came out with this little cover story on the actual sale of the painting. To me, what became very fascinating was the format. The flag was no longer the work of art. The new work of art was the entire media format with the artist in the $1 million stance, which I recreated myself at the exhibition and was documented in the stance. So basically what I'm doing, taking John's notions, is to, as much as John's usurped the power of the American flag with his early paintings back in the 50s, I am running on the same lines by usurping his power in the 80s. As I compare the painting work I've done and the graphic work, for the amount of painting I've done, I'd say that is only a quarter of the amount of time that I've had to spend, that I have spent at a desk chasing graphic or two-dimensional illusion through media and creating collage and various geometric techniques to which bring themselves into the painting when I finally do get to a surface and have to paint with it. There's a lot of groundwork that's gone in on this basic level. Working at a two-dimensional level like this, you can travel extremely fast in a very short time. You're working with well, you're having a communion unto yourself, but the energy that the machinery of the world outside, say printing through magazines, which is generally the greatest source of reference I have, is you can take things from various magazines, cross them into your own reality, and have something new, a whole new world. Basically, what goes on within the artistic expression, as I'm experiencing, is that you have an opportunity to make your own statement. It is your statement, whether you're using somebody else's images or somebody else's color or even somebody else's style. You're still making your own statement.
New Zealand painting has also come in for its share of remaking. Dick Frizzell's well-known painting of a Macquilton recently received the Womble treatment. Frank has become a familiar figure on the streets of Ponsonby, the inner city suburb of Auckland where he lives and works.
For the last decade here in New Zealand, I've been well, the information and the illusions and all the things that have come into me have been siphoned through the extremity of New Zealand's faraway phenomena to Northern Hemisphere. And I'm getting to the end of the stage of regurgitating and making comment with this material, and I'm just about through it. I've got a big sculpture that I want to render for the people of Auckland, and after that it'll be going back to A and bringing Z to them.
To date, it has not been possible to get City Council approval for the proposed outdoor sculpture. Objections were raised because the sculpture is to be made of junk.
He had been assembling the materials for the sculpture over a long period of time. Had the sculpture been made of more noble materials, then conceivably zoning approval or site approval would have been given for that sculpture to have been located where it was intended. But because it was junk, it was seen to be an assemblage of junk, a spoof, and not art. And clearly that causes a problem for some people.
America's been the major dream or illusion producing phenomena of this modern time. And its illusions and its distribution, its communication has been so mighty that even down in New Zealand, those are the dreams and the super archetypes that we live out our existence with. And so I'm just down here living them out, kids.